Hey folks, tonight we're diving headfirst into one of those family dramas that would make any soap opera writer green with envy. You know those families where the last name seems to come with a success expectations manual and a detailed history of who takes after whom in the entrepreneurship department. Well, yeah, today's story is about dreams, painful rejections, favoritism that blinds, and that curious human tendency to want to surf the wave of someone else's success after the wave has already crashed hard on the shore. Before the next family inheritance turns into a courtroom drama, or before your patience with unfairness runs out. An invitation. Hit that like button and subscribe if you too feel that family can be both your greatest support and your most interesting challenge, especially here on The Boring Testament. And tell me in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's always fascinating to know who's with us on this roller coaster of family expectations and entrepreneurial hurdles. All right, now, pull your favorite blanket up to your neck, adjust those headphones just right, maybe cover your eyes with that sleep mask, and let's together unpack the saga of a dream, a rejection, and an unexpected lifeline. Our protagonist today, let's call him Leo, a young man in his early 30s, wasn't exactly born into poverty, far from it. He grew up in a family where living comfortably was the baseline. His father, a local Midas with various businesses, scattered across the city. Real estate, retail, who knows what else. His mother, owner of multiple buildings, plural if you please. His grandparents, though not as affluent, were the pioneers, the salt-of-the-earth entrepreneurs who scraped and saved to give their children that initial leg up. In this lineage, the tradition was clear-cut. You either inherit something and try your darndest not to turn the estate into cosmic dust, or you roll up your sleeves and build your own empire. Leo, naturally, with entrepreneurial blood practically simmering, or so he believed, aimed for the latter. And this wasn't some teenage fantasy of opening a coconut shack on a beach and branding it a tropical wellness startup. Nothing wrong with that, mind you, but Leo had a plan, a solid, detailed plan, with the potential to actually work. The name of the game? Cybersecurity. Since he was 14 when he accidentally, or perhaps not so accidentally, breached the school server to make a minor tweak to his detention record, Leo discovered a genuine knack for the digital universe. He went to college, graduated with a computer science degree, and spent countless hours obsessing over encryption, data breaches, and coding. Post-graduation, the epiphany. Cybersecurity wasn't just an interesting career path, it was a potential goldmine. Every company needs it, every bank craves it, every hospital requires it. It was like selling high-tech umbrellas in a world where the forecast is perpetually sensitive data showers with a high chance of hacker hurricanes. Leo had the vision, a potential client base, and a business plan that, in his not-so-humble opinion, would impress even the most hardened skeptic. But as in every good hero's or corporate anti-hero's origin story, there was an obstacle. The villain known as seed capital. He needed money to start, a lot of it. Not millions for a private island, understand. Just enough to rent an office that wasn't his grandma's basement, hire a small but brilliant team, and invest in essential software and hardware. Could he have started with less? Sure. But Leo had this crystal-clear image in his head of how the company should look and operate from day one. So, one fine morning, armed with charts, market research, and a passion that would make a dormant volcano look like a lukewarm kettle, Leo presented his case to his parents. Living room, freshly brewed coffee, the perfect setting for a life-altering request. And he wasn't asking for a gift, a no-strings-attached handout. He asked for a loan, a serious investment, with the promise of repayment plus interest as soon as the business took off. The response? A bucket of ice-cold water, or rather a glacial ocean of nope, "Leo, we love you," they began, "but we just don't think you have what it takes to run a business." No apparent cruelty, mind you. His father sighed as he said it, as if the refusal caused him an emotional slip disc. His mother offered that look of pitying affection that mothers reserve for when they think you're being adorably naive, a look perfected over centuries of maternal wisdom. The paternal reasoning? Being a programming genius doesn't magically make you a business tycoon. Running a company, he explained with the patience of someone teaching a goldfish to ride a bicycle, involves, well, running it. Dealing with accounts, employees, investors, losses, all that tedious and decidedly unfun part of adult entrepreneurial life. And according to their parental assessment, Leo simply lacked that spark, that certain je ne sais quoi of the successful go-getter. For them, investing in Leo wasn't an investment. It was akin to buying a lottery ticket. For the failure jackpot. Let's not mince words. That stung PLHIV. At first, Leo felt anger, a deep, simmering rage. But stubbornness, or perhaps unwavering faith in his dream, still burned brighter. A month after this drenching of familial realism, a social event would further shake our protagonist's convictions and patience. His cousin Bruno's wedding. A grand, lavish affair. One of those 3-day extravaganzas with champagne fountains and enough ostentation to make a pharaoh feel like a commoner. At one point, Leo was near the buffet table, probably picking at a canapé and nursing his rejection, when Bruno sauntered over to Leo's parents. Handshakes, smiles, and then the words that landed like an anvil in Leo's ears. "Uncle, Aunt, thank you again for believing in me and helping me with the funds for my hotel business. I couldn't have done it without you." Leo just stood there, processing, staring at Bruno as if he'd just announced he was a disguised alien selling intergalactic life insurance policies. Leo's parents chuckled nervously, said something polite, and changed the subject faster than a politician on an election scandal emerges day. The penny dropped with the weight of 1,000 rejections. Leo had asked for a loan, business plan and all. They'd said no. But Bruno, cousin Bruno, got funding for a hotel. A damn hotel. Leo mumbled an excuse and retreated from the festivities, the bitter taste of betrayal coating his tongue. Not because of Bruno's funding, good for him, one assumes, but at the stark realization that to his own parents he, their son, apparently wasn't worth the risk. Trust had an address, and it clearly wasn't his. It was then that Leo's grandmother, equipped with that infallible radar all grandmothers seem to possess for broken hearts and simmering family injustices, found him moping in a quiet corner. "Leo, dear, what are you doing out here? Why aren't you enjoying the celebration?" And with grandmothers, there's no point in dissembling. They know, they always know. So Leo poured his heart out, told her everything. The grandmother listened, patiently, then uttered words that would be etched in his memory. "Leo, sometimes people see potential in others because they see a version of themselves in them. It's possible your father sees a younger version of himself in Bruno, but that doesn't mean you're not capable. You're different, and being different isn't bad, it's just different." She squeezed his hand and added, a knowing sparkle in her eyes, "You're smart, you work hard. One day you're going to build something incredible. It'll just be on your own terms." Words that, even if they sounded like self-help platitudes, were the precise balm Leo's wounded soul craved at that moment. The day after that revealing conversation with his grandmother at the wedding party, our protagonist Leo was still in an emotional fog. A strange mix of motivation, thanks to his grandmother's wise words, and a profound devastation from his parents' rejection. While he was stewing in these feelings, his phone rang. It was his grandfather, and Leo's grandfather was not the type to call just to chat. The call was an invitation, a request for Leo to come see him alone. Upon arriving at his grandparents', Leo was greeted with a warm smile from his grandmother and a hug from his grandfather, who, without beating around the bush, got straight to the point. "Your grandmother told me what happened at the party," he said, "and about your business plans." Leo's grandfather then shared a bit of his own story, a narrative not found in the family's annals of success. "I started my first business with nothing more than an old van and a loan from my uncle. Nobody thought it would work," he confessed. "But it did. And you know why? Because someone believed in me. Sometimes just one person believing in you makes all the difference." It was then that the grandfather did something that would change the course of Leo's story. He opened his desk drawer, took out a checkbook, wrote in it, and handed it to his grandson. It wasn't all the capital Leo needed to launch his ambitious cybersecurity firm the way he envisioned, but it was enough to get started. It was enough to make a real difference. Leo, staring at the check, felt a lump in his throat. It wasn't just money. It was concrete proof, the materialization of the trust his own parents had denied him. "Make us proud," the grandfather said. And in that moment, Leo knew he couldn't fail. With that initial funding, which was as much an emotional vote of confidence as a financial investment, Leo knew he had to be surgical with every penny. No lavish desks or trendy office chairs. He started small, almost brutally humble. He contacted his two best friends from college, Adam and Luis, who were also brilliant programmers. They pooled what little savings they had, which wasn't much, and rented a tiny, cramped office in the least glamorous part of the city. But to them, that space was their kingdom. The first 2 years, as in every good startup origin story, were a test of physical and mental endurance. They worked 14 to 16 hours a day. Weekends were an abstract concept, something that happened to other people. Their diet consisted basically of variations of instant noodles, vending machine snacks, and the cheapest caffeine they could find to keep their eyes open. While Luis handled endless calls and Adam was buried in lines of code, Leo did a bit of everything. He was the CEO, the salesman, the janitor, and occasionally the group therapist. The first major sigh of relief came in the form of a panicked client. A mid-sized financial company that had just been hacked. They were desperate. Leo's team dived into the problem, worked non-stop, managed to repair the systems, recover the data, and most importantly, implement barriers to prevent future breaches. That project not only saved the client's skin, but gave Leo's small company the capital and, crucially, the reputation they needed. Word of mouth, the oldest and still one of AI's most effective forms of marketing, started to work its magic. From there, the momentum grew. The company began to land bigger, more complex clients. Their reputation as the guys who solved the problem spread. About 4 years after that caffeine and determination-fueled journey began, they hit a major milestone, enough revenue to consider real expansion. They opened a second office in a nearby city, and a year later, a third in another major city. They were no longer just a makeshift startup. They were a respected cybersecurity firm, a force to be reckoned with in the market. With growth came evolution. They launched a cybersecurity consulting arm, realizing that companies didn't just want to fix breaches. They wanted to proactively prevent them. And consulting, my friends, was where the real value and the profit margins lay. The consulting money tasted different. It tasted of prevention, strategy, and consolidated trust. And then, 5 years after starting the business with the help of that check from his grandfather, Leo was finally in a position to pay it back. He drove to his grandparents' house, check in hand, not only returning the original amount, but with a generous interest he set himself. But Leo's gratitude didn't stop there. These two people had given him a chance when no one else would. So he bought them a new house. Nothing ridiculously extravagant, but a cozy, comfortable home in a neighborhood they had always loved. Watching his grandparents walk through their new home, pointing out little details they liked, was, for Leo, one of the most gratifying and meaningful moments of his life, a payback worth more than any million-dollar contract. While Leo's cybersecurity business prospered, fate, with its characteristic irony, was weaving a different plot for cousin Bruno and his grand hotel project. The global pandemic, or we can imagine a major economic crisis if you prefer, completely crushed the tourism industry. Bruno's hotel, which had started with such fanfare and the enthusiastic support of Leo's parents, never fully recovered. Apparently, they injected even more money to try to save the venture. But despite all efforts, and here Leo would admit to feeling a pang of pity for his cousin, the hotel eventually closed its doors. A bitter lesson on how parental trust and money are. No guarantee of success, especially when the business plan might not have been as solid as the enthusiasm. Leo's success and his cousin Bruno's failure created a silent contrast, an irony of fate that hung over family gatherings. But the universe, or perhaps just human psychology, has a peculiar way of turning awkward silences into open confrontations. And the stage for this drama was about to be set, not in a boardroom or a courtroom, but in a ballroom during what was supposed to be a celebration of love and gratitude. It was the 50th wedding anniversary of Leo's grandparents. The two people who, with an act of faith and a checkbook, had changed the course of his life. Leo, now a successful businessman and profoundly grateful, decided the occasion deserved more than a simple cake and a card. He spared no expense. He rented an elegant hotel ballroom, hired a fine catering service, arranged for a live band, and invited every friend, family member, and even old neighbors they hadn't seen in years. Honestly, planning that event felt more emotional than closing some of the biggest business deals he'd ever made. It was the materialization of his gratitude. The party was spectacular. Everyone was dressed up, the food was incredible, and his grandparents were radiant, their eyes shining with happiness, which was what mattered most. But as in any good family tragedy, the protagonists of the conflict soon entered the scene. At some point during the evening, Leo overheard his father talking to one of his old friends. When the friend commented on how proud he must be of Leo, his father launched into a rehearsed speech about family values and how his support and guidance had set Leo on the right path. To top it off, he mentioned how the company was now practically a family business. "Excuse me? What?" Leo thought. He'd misheard, but no. As the night went on, he kept catching fragments of conversations where his parents painted themselves as the backbone of his success. "We always knew he'd do something great," his mother would say. "We supported him every step of the way," his father would claim. "It's what we do as a family. We lift each other up." The audacity of that historical revisionism, of that appropriation of a victory they had refused to support, began to make Leo's blood boil. The calm revolt he'd been harboring for years was about to lose its composure. He had planned a simple speech, a sincere and affectionate tribute to his grandparents. But after hearing that family marketing campaign, he knew he couldn't let it slide anymore. He took the stage, started with a light tone, made a couple of jokes, mentioned how their marriage was older than the internet, and spoke of the love and respect they'd always shown each other. But then his expression shifted. His voice became more serious, calmer, more incisive. "You see," he said, the room now silent, "Grandma and Grandpa didn't just build a life together. They built a legacy of love, trust, and most importantly, of faith in people. When I had a dream and everyone else closed the door in my face, they opened it. They didn't just believe in my idea, they believed in me, and everything I have today I owe to the faith they placed in me when no one else did." He paused. His parents were staring at him, frozen smiles plastered on their faces. "So," he raised his glass, "so, tonight, I want to propose a toast to Grandma and Grandpa, the only two people who believed in me when no one else would. This success is yours and no one else's." His grandmother was crying, moved. His grandfather nodded with that proud, quiet smile of his. And his parents were smiling through clenched teeth, applauding as if they were swallowing ground glass. 15 minutes later, the confrontation came. Leo's father found him near the dessert table, his face red. "What the hell was that speech?" he whispered furiously. "Were you trying to humiliate us in front of everyone?" "Humiliate you?" Leo replied, his own calmness now evaporating. "I just told the truth. You didn't believe in me, but they did." His mother joined the conversation. "You didn't have to air our family's dirty laundry for everyone. You made us look terrible." Leo, trying to keep his composure, bit his tongue. But the last straw came from his father. "You act as if we did nothing for you. We gave you a good life, a good education. How dare you make us the villains in your little success story?" And there, the dam broke. "You know what?" Leo said, his voice now loud enough for the nearby tables to go silent. "You didn't believe in me. You had the money, but you gave it to Bruno for his hotel without a second thought. And when he failed, you gave him even more. But when I, your son, came to you with my idea, you told me I didn't have the spark." The ballroom fell completely silent. The guests were staring. His cousin Bruno of the failed hotel was sipping his drink awkwardly in a corner, as if he wanted to merge with the wallpaper. Leo's father pointed a trembling finger at him. "You're being ungrateful." And Leo, completely losing his cool, shot back, "Ungrateful? For what? No, I'm not ungrateful. I'm just saying out loud what everyone here already knows." His chest felt tight, his face was hot, and he realized he had just caused a massive scene at what was supposed to be a celebration for his grandparents. He looked around and saw his grandmother watching him with a soft, sad expression. Not disappointed, just sad. His grandfather had his arm around her as if trying to keep her steady. It was then that the guilt hit him like a punch. He didn't say another word, simply turned around, walked out that drive home, after abandoning his grandparents' party amidst a whirlwind of guilt and anger, was one of the longest of Leo's life. The sleepless night that followed, replaying every word spoken, every look of disappointment, was just the prelude. Leo thought the confrontation at the party would be the climax of the family drama, the point where everyone would be forced to face the truth. Little did he know that his parents, instead of reflecting, had decided to press the nuclear button of narrative warfare. The next morning brought a text message from his grandmother. "Leo, we love you very much. Please don't feel bad about last night, we understand." A small balm, a spark of sanity in the midst of the madness. But that calm was short-lived. It started subtly. A cousin sent a text with that false concern that barely hides a thirst for gossip. "Hey, Leo, is it true you manipulated Grandma and Grandpa into giving you money?" That's what Uncle said. Leo laughed at first, because it sounded so ridiculous, but the laughter died as calls and messages from other relatives started pouring in. An aunt posted on social media that she was disappointed in how he used his grandparents' emotions to take advantage of them. An impressive plot twist. Suddenly, Leo was no longer the ungrateful son who exposed an inconvenient truth. He was the master manipulator, the Machiavellian villain who exploited the good faith of the elderly to fund his whims. A much more convenient narrative for his parents, don't you think? Unable to let that story spread, Leo called his parents, searching for some trace of reason. "What the hell are you telling everyone? Why are people calling me, saying I manipulated my grandparents?" His mother's response, from the other end of the line, was a masterpiece of twisted logic. "Well, didn't you cry to them? Didn't you make them feel sorry for you? That's manipulation. We, here at the Boring Testament, attempted to applaud the mental gymnastics. Sharing your pain and receiving empathy, in her view, was the same as orchestrating an emotional con. His father, in the background, shouted something like, "You can interpret it however you want, Leo, but now everyone is seeing you for who you really are." And so, Leo realized there was no room for dialogue. He was fighting a version of the facts that was immune to the truth. He said, "Okay, perfect. Tell everyone whatever you want. I'm tired of trying to explain." And he hung up. But peace did not come. Over the next week, the rumors only got wilder, more creative. A relative said they heard he had threatened to cut off his grandparents if they didn't give him the money. Another said he bragged about how he had manipulated them and laughed about it afterward. It felt like trying to put out a fire with an eyedropper, while the arsonists had gasoline cans and unlimited access to the family's contact list. The turning point came with a call from his cousin, Bruno. Yes, the very same one from the failed hotel. In an awkward voice he said, "Hey man, I know things are complicated now, but don't you think you could talk to your parents and fix this?" Leo replied, with the weary calm of someone who's seen it all. "There's nothing to fix, Bruno. They know the truth. They're just choosing to ignore it." It was the last link he felt obligated to maintain. After that conversation, Leo sent one last text message to his parents. "I can't do this anymore. You've made the decision to spread these lies, and I can't keep trying to convince you otherwise. I'm stepping away from this relationship for now. I love you both, but I can't keep letting this hurt me." And that was it. He blocked them on social media, which had already become a stage for passive-aggressive posts about ungrateful children. He stopped responding to relatives who were clearly just looking for more gossip for their banquet of malevolence. He went into a kind of self-imposed exile, not out of anger, but for self-preservation. The calm revolt, which was once an internal feeling of injustice, now became an external action of distancing. Because sometimes the only way to win a war of narratives in which you've already been cast as the villain is to simply refuse to participate in the spectacle. But as Leo would soon discover in the grand saga of families, the scriptwriter of destiny always reserves a few more plot twists, especially when there's an inheritance on the horizon. And the passing of a beloved patriarch would bring to the surface conflicts even deeper than those revealed at an anniversary party. Leo's self-imposed distance, that invisible boundary he erected to protect himself from the toxicity and smear campaign of his own parents, brought a precarious peace. But as in any complex family saga, destiny seemed to have one more act in reserve, a final chapter that would be triggered not by an argument at a party, but by the inevitable and painful passage of time. Leo's grandfather, the man who had been his anchor of trust and the catalyst for his success, passed away peacefully in his sleep. A serene departure for a good soul. But for Leo, it was a blow as profound as the rejection he had once felt. That hug and those words of encouragement in his grandfather's study now became sacred memories. Leo, setting aside his grievances, dove into supporting his grandmother, helping to organize a funeral that was a true testament to the man his grandfather was. Hundreds of people attended, from old business partners to childhood friends and neighbors, all to pay their respects. Even Leo's parents were there, and although there was a forced civility in the air, the tension was palpable, a fog of unresolved issues hanging over the grief. And it was during the reading of the will that this fog transformed into a new storm. The lawyer began to list the assets, and when he reached the lake house, that idyllic property, filled with fond childhood memories for both Leo and his father. The grandfather's will was clear. The house would be divided equally between Leo and his cousin Laura. Upon hearing this, Leo's father's jaw tightened. Without a word, but with a look that promised war, he left after the reading, furious. To him, this wasn't an inheritance. It was the final act of a slight from his own father, a final confirmation that the grandson, not the son, was the true heir to his trust. What followed was the materialization of that fury in legalese. Leo's father decided to sue him for the lake house. The formal accusation? That Leo had obtained the inheritance improperly by manipulating his grandfather in his final years. The same narrative as the smear campaign, now with the stamp of a lawsuit. After the gossip, the subpoena. Because in the handbook of toxic family dynamics, when rumors don't work, the next step is often litigation. The lawsuit dragged on, with his father's lawyers using every tactic to prolong the dispute, perhaps, in the hope that Leo would tire and give in. But Leo, strengthened by the desire to honor his grandfather's will, did not back down. His grandmother's testimony was crucial, and even his aunt, Laura's mother, and surprisingly his cousin Bruno, sided with him, describing the pattern of his parents' behavior. The ultimate irony, his father's public smear campaign became so widespread and damaging to Leo's business that it gave Leo the grounds for a countersuit for defamation and damages. The outcome in court was a victory for Leo on all fronts. He kept his share of the lake house, and his defamation countersuit was successful, resulting in his parents having to pay him damages. But the most bitter revelation came when his father's true motive for wanting the house was exposed. It wasn't about childhood memories. He desperately needed the money. The bad investment in Bruno's failed hotel, coupled with other loans to try and save it, had left his parents in a precarious financial position. The lake house was not a sentimental treasure to be preserved. It was an asset to be liquidated to cover the holes of a bad bet. The very same bet that years before they had placed on the cousin to the detriment of their son. The calm revolt we feel here, nocturnal explorers, is in the face of this tragedy of vanity and pride. Leo's father, unable to admit his error, in judgment, both in business and in his son's character, preferred to spend a fortune on lawyers and destroy what was left of his family relation.